The giant screen in the United Coalition headquarters showed the alien ship approaching Earth. Commander Elaine Walsh watched with tight lips and clenched fists. This was the 12th Vorzoth vessel to enter Earth orbit this week. They're early. For the meeting, she said to Dr. Nathan Cole, who stood beside her. Nathan nodded. They're always early. I think they enjoy making us scramble. Or testing our reactions, Elaine said. She straightened her uniform and checked the time. 3 years of negotiations with the Vorzoth Confederation had taught her to expect mind games. Let's not keep them waiting. The meeting room was designed to impress human visitors, but the 7-foot-tall Vorzoth ambassadors made the grand table and high ceilings seem small. Their blue-gray skin reflected the light oddly, and their 4 eyes, too large and too small, tracked every human movement. Commander Walsh, the lead Vorzoth, Ambassador Zrel, said in a voice that sounded like stones grinding together, "We have reviewed your latest proposal. It is unacceptable." Elaine kept her face neutral. "What part do you find unacceptable, Ambassador?" "All of it." The Vorzoth leaned forward. "Our Confederation has made its final decision. Humanity must leave the Sol system." The room went silent. Elaine felt her heart rate spike but maintained her calm exterior. "Leave? You can't be serious. Earth is our home. Billions of people. Your development is too rapid, your adaptability too dangerous," interrupted Zrel. "The Confederation has classified humans as an imminent existential threat." Dr. Cole stepped forward. "That's absurd. We've shared all our research, held back nothing. You've seen we're peaceful. We've seen your history," another Vorzoth cut in. "And more importantly, we've observed your evolutionary rate. You advance technologically in decades what took other species centuries. Your brains adapt to new problems faster than any known species." Elaine tried a different approach. "If you're concerned about certain technologies, we can agree to limitations, research restrictions. It is not your technology alone that concerns us," Zrel said. "It is what you are becoming. You will leave the Sol system, or you will be removed. You have 6 Earth months to begin evacuation." After the Vorzoth left, the Coalition Emergency Council gathered. Admirals, presidents, and prime ministers from around the world filled the screens. Admiral Frank Webster spoke first. "We can fight. The defense grid would last approximately 2 days against their fleet," Elaine interrupted. "We've all seen the intelligence reports. We can't evacuate billions of people in 6 months," said the president of the African Union. "It's impossible." Dr. Cole cleared his throat. "Not all of us, but some." All eyes turned to him. "The Exodus Protocol," he said quietly. The Exodus Protocol had been a theoretical emergency plan, never meant to be implemented. It outlined how humanity might survive if Earth became uninhabitable. Now it was their only option. Over the next months, the world changed. 1,500 massive ships were built or converted in orbiting shipyards. The Coalition announced a lottery system combined with skills-based selection to choose who would go. 15 million people out of billions. In a secure lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, Olivia Marsh worked day and night on the propulsion systems for the fleet. Her team had been developing quantum fold drives that could cross vast distances in relatively short times. "They're not ready," she told Elaine during an inspection. Olivia's red hair was tied back haphazardly, dark circles under her eyes. "We need at least another year of testing." "We don't have a year," Elaine replied simply. "Make them work." On the other side of the complex, Dr. Cole personally supervised the loading of special cargo. Genetic samples from millions of Earth's inhabitants, plants and animals, a backup of humanity's DNA. "This isn't fair," he said to no one in particular as he worked. "This isn't right." The day the first Vorzoth battleships entered the solar system, Admiral Webster called an emergency meeting. "They're not waiting the full 6 months," he announced to the gathered leaders. "We need to launch now." The evacuation order went out worldwide. Chaos erupted in some regions as the reality set in for those left behind. The Coalition deployed troops to maintain order at the spaceports, but the scenes were heartbreaking. Families, separated, Goodbyes cut short. Elaine was tasked with one final negotiation while the fleet prepared to depart. She met with Zrel aboard the Vorzoth command ship. "Our sensors detect your evacuation is underway," the alien said without greeting. "This is wise. I need your assurance," Elaine said, "that those who remain will not be harmed." "We have no interest in destroying your species," Zrel replied. "Only in removing a threat. The remaining humans will be relocated to habitable regions. They will live out their natural lives." "And our return? When can we come home?" The Vorzoth made a sound that might have been a laugh. "When you have evolved, beyond your violent nature, when you no longer present a threat, that's not an answer. It is the only one you will receive." As Elaine boarded the command ship of the Exodus fleet, she watched the blue planet growing smaller on the view screen. Admiral Webster stood beside her. "All ships report ready," he said. 15 million souls accounted for. "Olivia?" Elaine asked. "The quantum drives are installed on the lead ships. The rest will have to use conventional engines until we can build more." Elaine nodded and addressed the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Commander Walsh. Our course is set for the Arcturus sector. It's not our home, but it will be our beginning. The Vorzoth believe they know us, what we're capable of, what we might become. They fear us enough to take our home. Remember that. Remember Earth." As the fleet moved past Mars, sensors detected hundreds of Vorzoth ships entering the inner solar system. They were already moving toward Earth. "They're not waiting for stragglers," Frank muttered. "No," Elaine agreed. "Record everything. Someday we'll need to remember exactly what they did." In her private quarters later, Elaine found a message from Dr. Cole. When she opened it, she saw a simple text: "Project Shadow initiated. Phase 1 complete." She smiled for the first time in months. The Vorzoth thought they were dealing with defeated refugees. They didn't understand that humans worked best when cornered. The evacuation fleet was just the obvious part of humanity's response. The shadows were where humans would truly prepare their return. 27 years had passed since the Exodus fleet left Earth. The ships that once flew together in tight formation were now scattered across several star systems. Captain Ryan Hudson stood on the bridge of the scout vessel Pathfinder and looked at the unfamiliar stars around him. "Status report," he said to his crew. "We're at the edge of the Centauri arm," replied his navigator. "No signs of Vorzoth activity in this sector." Ryan nodded. The Pathfinder was one of 50 scout ships mapping safe routes for human settlement. They had traveled farther than most of the fleet, seeking both safety and intelligence. "Send the ET data back to Arcturus base. Tell them the sector looks clean." 3 days later, the Pathfinder received new orders. They were to meet with a shadow operative in a small trading outpost run by a species called the Grell. Ryan had never met a shadow operative before. These were the humans who had chosen the most dangerous path after the Exodus: direct infiltration of alien societies to gather intelligence about the Vorzoth. The trading outpost was built into an asteroid. Inside, various alien species mingled in the artificial atmosphere. Ryan wore a breathing mask that also helped hide his human features. "Captain Hudson?" Ryan turned to see a woman with dark hair and sharp eyes. She looked human, but her skin had an odd bluish tint. "Diana Wells," she said quietly. "Let's find somewhere private." They found a small alcove where they could talk without being overheard. "The shadows have made progress," Diana said. "We've infiltrated 12 different species so far." "How?" Ryan asked. "You look almost human." Diana smiled. "Genetic modifications. Dr. Cole's legacy. We can pass for several species with the right changes." She handed him a data chip. "This contains information your fleet needs. The Vorzoth lied to us about everything. Earth wasn't taken because we were dangerous. It was taken for resources and its strategic position." Ryan took the chip. "How did you learn this?" "Ben Porter. He's one of ours, working as a translator in the Vorzoth embassy on Durax. He's been decoding their communications." She leaned closer. "They never intended to let anyone return to Earth. Their plan was always to take the system for themselves." Ryan felt cold anger rise inside him. The millions who stayed behind, who were promised they could live out their lives, What had happened to them? There's more, Diana continued. The Confederation isn't as united as they made us believe. Several member species resent Vorzoth leadership. We're making contact with them slowly. On the return journey to Arcturus base, Ryan studied the data Diana had given him. It contained not just information about the Vorzoth, but detailed maps of trade routes, defense systems, and communication networks spanning dozens of star systems. The Shadows had been busy. They were building something far more valuable than ships or weapons. They were building knowledge. Arcturus base had grown from a small outpost to a hidden city built inside a hollowed-out moon. Here, the leaders of the scattered human settlements met to coordinate their long-term strategy. Grace Miller, the chief data analyst, presented Diana's findings to the Shadow Council. The Vorzoth Confederation has 12 member species, but only 3 hold real power, she explained. The others are essentially vassals. We've identified several that might be sympathetic to us. Diana Wells stood next. We have operatives embedded in 6 major trading hubs. We're establishing covers as merchants, technicians, even entertainers. The Vorzoth rarely pay attention to service workers, which gives us access to their ships and bases. Ben Porter, newly arrived from Durax, shared his discoveries. Their language contains hierarchical markers we missed during first contact. When they called us an imminent threat, the actual meaning was closer to unwanted competition. They saw our potential and decided to eliminate it before we could challenge them. The council debated their next steps. Some wanted immediate action, targeted strikes against Vorzoth interests. Others advocated continued patience. We have time, Diana argued. They think we're gone, scattered refugees. Let them keep thinking that while we grow stronger. In the end, they voted to expand the Shadow Network while establishing permanent settlements far from Vorzoth space. Humanity would develop on 2 fronts: visible colonies focused on growth and survival, and an invisible web of operatives working to undermine their enemy. As the years passed, the Shadows refined their methods. They moved like ghosts through alien societies, gathering information, making connections, and planting seeds of doubt about Vorzoth rule. Diana Wells became their unofficial leader. Under her guidance, they established a training facility on an uninhabited world where recruits learned to blend in with various alien cultures. They studied languages, customs, and biology. Some underwent genetic modifications that allowed them to pass as non-humans. On a rainy night 50 years after the Exodus, Diana met with her inner circle in a secure room deep inside the training facility. We've identified our first target, she told them. A minor Vorzoth trading post in the Rigel sector. It's small enough that its failure won't draw too much attention, but connected enough that its collapse will ripple through their economy. Ben. Porter looked concerned. Direct action? Are we ready? Not direct, Diana clarified. We'll use economic pressure. Our operatives will manipulate supply chains, redirect shipments, introduce just enough inefficiency to make the post unprofitable. The Vorzoth will close it themselves. And the point? Asked Grace Miller. To test our methods, Diana replied, and to teach our people an important lesson. Sometimes the most effective way to destroy something is to make it destroy itself. The operation took 3 years of careful manipulation. When the Vorzoth finally abandoned the trading post, citing logistical inefficiencies, the Shadows celebrated their first victory. It was small, almost insignificant in the grand scheme. But it proved their approach could work. At the next Shadow Council meeting, Captain Ryan Hudson, now commander of the Scout Fleet, reported disturbing news. The Vorzoth are expanding into the Sagittarius Arm. If they continue, they'll eventually discover our settlements. Diana remained calm. Then we need to give them reasons to look elsewhere. Create problems in other sectors that demand their attention. Can we do that? Ryan asked. Diana smiled. The genetic modifications that gave her skin its bluish tint had been refined over the years. Now she could pass completely as a member of the Solari, a species that worked closely with the Vorzoth. We've spent 50 years positioning our people throughout their territory. We have access to their ships, their communications, their trading networks. She looked around the table. The time for watching and waiting is over. Now we start to pull the strings. 175 years after the Exodus, Marcus Kelly walked through the busy market on Durax Prime, the largest trading hub in the Vorzoth Confederation. To anyone watching, he appeared to be a Tellarite merchant, his skin bearing the characteristic orange tint and ridged forehead of that species. No one would guess he was human. Marcus stopped at a food stall and purchased a bowl of something that looked like blue noodles. The vendor, a tall insect-like being, chittered at him. "Business good, yes? Many ships today." "Too many," Marcus replied in perfect Tellarite dialect. "Makes prices go up." The vendor wasn't just selling food, he was one of many informants in Marcus's network. The chittering contained a code. A Vorzoth military vessel had arrived unexpectedly. Marcus finished his meal and made his way to his trading office. Inside, away from prying eyes, he activated a secure communication channel. "Unexpected visitors," he reported. "Military class, 7th Fleet markings." Halfway across the sector, Jack Reynolds received the message. As intelligence director for the Shadow Network, he coordinated information from thousands of operatives. He immediately alerted other agents in the area to increase surveillance on the Vorzoth vessel. Jack's command center was hidden deep within an asteroid belt. The walls displayed real-time data from across known space. Red dots showed Vorzoth military positions. Blue dots represented human settlements, now numbering in the hundreds. Green dots marked shadow operatives. "Director," his assistant called. "Sophia Russell is requesting to speak with you." Sophia's face appeared on the screen. Her features were mostly human, but her eyes were larger with vertical pupils, the result of genetic modifications that allowed her to move freely in sectors controlled by the Neth, a Vorzoth-allied species. "The new adaptations are ready," she reported. "We can now successfully modify humans to pass as Karathi." This was significant news. The Karathi were one of the founding species of the Vorzoth Confederation, with access to the highest levels of their government. "How many can you process?" Jack asked. 5 per month with the current resources," Sophia replied. "The changes are extensive. Bone structure, organ function, skin pigmentation, but they're stable. The subjects retain their human cognitive functions." "Excellent. Begin training immediately. I want the first group ready for deployment within 6 months." Sophia nodded. "There's something else. We've discovered the Karathi have been hiding something from the Vorzoth. They have their own secret research facilities in the Deneb sector." "Interesting. Keep me updated." Over the next few months, the Shadows placed their first Karathi-modified operatives. One of them, Lily Chen, secured a position in a Vorzoth research facility. Her mission was to gain access to their latest weapons technology. Lily had trained for 5 years for this role. She understood Karathi culture perfectly and could mimic their distinctive shuffling gait. Her cover identity was flawless. She was supposedly a specialist in energy systems from a minor Karathi colony. The research facility orbited a neutron star. The Vorzoth were attempting to harness its gravitational energy for a new class of weapons. Lily's job was to analyze power fluctuations, giving her access to the central computer systems. During her 3rd month at the facility, she discovered something unexpected. The Vorzoth weren't just developing weapons. They were searching for something, a specific energy signature they had detected in distant parts of the galaxy. Lily copied the data and transmitted it during her next scheduled communication. When Jack Reynolds reviewed it, he immediately called an emergency meeting of the Shadow Council. "They're looking for us," he told the assembled leaders. "Or rather, they're looking for our quantum drives." The quantum fold drives developed by Olivia Marsh generations ago had been refined over the years. They left a distinctive energy signature that the Vorzoth had apparently detected. "Have they traced it to any of our settlements?" Marcus Kelly asked. He had returned from Durax Prime for the meeting. "Not yet," Jack replied. "But they're systematically searching. It's only a matter of time." The news was concerning, but not devastating. The Shadow Network had been preparing for discovery. For nearly 2 centuries, they had contingency plans. "Implement Protocol Whisper," ordered Diana Wells. Now in her 80s, she remained the strategic heart of the Shadows, though younger operatives handled field missions. "Shut down all quantum drives except in emergency vessels. Switch to conventional propulsion for all regular travel. That will slow our operations considerably, Jack pointed out. Better slow than discovered, Diana replied. And accelerate Operation Mirror. If they're going to find us eventually, we need to be ready. Operation Mirror was their most ambitious plan yet, the strategic manipulation of Vorsoth economic systems. By creating artificial shortages and surpluses in key resources, they could gradually destabilize the Confederation from within. Lily continued her work at the research facility, carefully feeding selected information back to the shadows. She discovered the Vorsoth were experiencing technological stagnation. Their scientific advancement had plateaued, with few breakthroughs in recent decades. They're cannibalizing other species' innovations, she reported. Most of their recent discoveries were actually developed by their subject races. This confirmed what the shadows had suspected. The Vorsoth's greatest strength was not their technology, but their political dominance. They maintained control through military might and careful manipulation of their subject species. The Shadow Council developed a new strategy. Instead of direct confrontation, they would work to turn the member species against each other and against the Vorsoth leadership. Marcus Kelly's trading network became the perfect tool for this approach. His companies now operated on dozens of worlds, moving everything from food to luxury goods. By carefully controlling the flow of critical resources, they could create friction between different worlds and species. On the Vorsoth homeworld, a new operative was in place. Heather Collins had undergone extensive modification to appear as a Solari, one of the few species the Vorsoth trusted as advisors. Her placement had taken decades of careful maneuvering. Heather's position gave her access to high-level political discussions. She learned that the Vorsoth were facing internal problems they kept hidden from the rest of the Confederation. Their population was declining, and resource consumption on their homeworld had reached unsustainable levels. They're vulnerable, she reported to Jack Reynolds. More than they let anyone see. The Shadow Network continued to grow. Human colonies, hidden on distant worlds or disguised as alien settlements, now had a combined population of over 2 billion. The original 15 million from the Exodus had multiplied and spread across the stars, always careful to stay beyond Vorsoth detection. Their technology had developed along different paths than it might have on Earth. Necessity and caution had led to innovations in stealth systems, efficient resource use, and biological adaptation. As Jack Reynolds reviewed reports from across the network, he felt a sense of quiet pride. Humanity had not just survived, it had evolved into something new. The scattered children of Earth were now united in purpose, patient and methodical in their approach. The Vorsoth had cast them out, thinking they had eliminated a threat. Instead, they had created a hidden force that was slowly, carefully, learning all their weaknesses. Begin Phase 3, Jack ordered his operatives. It's time to apply pressure. 320 years after the Exodus, Director Alan Pierce stood at the viewing window of Shadow Command. The hidden station orbited a brown dwarf star, invisible to most scanning systems. At 78, he was relatively young, to hold the highest position in the Shadow Directorate. But these were unusual times. The Vorsoth fleet is moving toward the Proxima sector, reported Kyle Bennett, his field commander. Kyle's face showed signs of recent genetic modification. His skin had a slight purple tint that would fade in a few days. He had just returned from a mission in Vorsoth territory. How many ships? Alan asked. 23, all heavy cruisers. This was the third fleet movement this month. The Vorsoth were stretched thin, responding to multiple crises across their territory. None of them knew these crises had been carefully orchestrated by the Shadows. What's the status of the Rigel operation? Alan asked. Kyle brought up a holographic display. Melissa's team has successfully planted evidence suggesting the Karathi are stealing technology from the Vorsoth Central Archives. The internal security forces are already investigating. Melissa Ward specialized in psychological warfare. Her team's work involved creating distrust between the Confederation member species. This particular operation had been in motion for 5 years. A careful trail of fabricated evidence suggesting the Karathi, one of the founding members of the Confederation, had been secretly working against Vorzoth interests. And the resource shortage on their colony worlds? Proceeding as planned, Kyle answered. Marcus's trading network has redirected 80% of the raw material shipments. 3 Vorzoth mining colonies are reporting critical shortages. Alan nodded. Make sure the supplies find their way to the Tellarite sectors instead. Let's fuel their industrial growth. The strategy was working. After centuries of preparation, the Shadows were implementing Operation Phantom, the systematic destabilization of the Vorzoth Confederation. Rather than direct military confrontation, they were applying pressure to existing fracture points in the alliance. On the Vorzoth homeworld, Heather Collins attended a High Council meeting. After decades of service as a trusted Solari advisor, she had access to the highest levels of government. The council chamber was filled with Vorzoth leaders, their blue-gray skin looking dull under the harsh lighting. The situation on the outer colonies is worsening, reported the defense minister. We've lost contact with Outpost 7. That's the 3rd outpost this cycle. The Karathi delegation is demanding an explanation for the security investigations, added another council member. They're threatening to withdraw from the trade agreement. Heather listened carefully, occasionally offering mild suggestions that would seem helpful, but would actually exacerbate the problems. It was delicate work. Never pushing too hard, always appearing to serve Vorzoth interests while subtly undermining them. After the meeting, she encoded her observations and sent them through a secure channel disguised as routine administrative data. The message would bounce through dozens of relays before reaching Shadow Command. In another part of Vorzoth space, a small team led by Kyle Bennett approached a communications relay station. The 5 operatives wore environmental suits that concealed their features. They had spent weeks studying the station's security systems and patrol schedules. Remember, Kyle told his team, this needs to look like an accident. No evidence of intrusion. They entered through a maintenance hatch, quickly disabling the minimal security. The Vorzoth had grown complacent, especially at these routine facilities far from major worlds. Kyle reached the central control room and inserted a data chip into the main computer. The program would spread throughout the communications network, introducing subtle errors that would compound over time. Messages would be delayed, coordinates slightly altered, reports misrouted. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger an immediate investigation, but enough to create persistent problems. Charges set, reported one of his team members. The small explosives were placed near a power conduit. When they detonated, it would appear that a power surge had caused the damage. Clear out, Kyle ordered. Detonation in 10 minutes. They left as quietly as they had entered. From a safe distance, they watched as a section of the station briefly flared with light, then went dark. The explosion was contained, damaging only the internal systems rather than destroying the station entirely. Perfect, Kyle said. Let's move to the next target. Back at Shadow Command, Alan Pierce met with the other leaders of the Directorate. The chamber was secure against any form of surveillance, allowing them to speak freely. Phase 3 is proceeding ahead of schedule, he informed them. The Vorzoth are facing simultaneous crises on multiple fronts. Their military is scattered, responding to threats that don't actually exist. What about Earth? Asked an older woman. The question was inevitable at these meetings. Despite the centuries that had passed, Earth remained a powerful symbol. Our deep cover operatives report that the Vorzoth have largely abandoned it, Alan replied. They stripped the system of valuable resources decades ago. Only a small research outpost remains. And the humans who stayed behind? Someone else, asked. Alan's expression darkened. Gone. The Vorzoth promises were lies. They were either removed to labor colonies or eliminated. A moment of silence followed this confirmation of what many had long suspected. Then Alan continued with the briefing. Melissa Ward's team has identified our next major target, the annual Confederation Summit. For the first time in 50 years, representatives from all member species will gather in one location. He displayed a holographic image of a massive space station orbiting a gas giant. Our operative Heather Collins will be part of the advisory team. She's been laying the groundwork for months, heightening tensions between key delegations. What's the objective? Asked one of the council members. Not destruction, Alan clarified. Revelation. We want to expose centuries of Vorsoth manipulation and exploitation of their supposed allies. We have evidence dating back to before the Exodus, proof that they've systematically held back technological development of other species while stealing their innovations. It was their most ambitious operation yet. Success would mean the beginning of the end for the Confederation in Tiataichu, its current form. As the meeting concluded, Alan returned to the viewing window. In the distance, barely visible, was a small blue-green dot, a habitable planet where over 50 million humans lived in the open. They called it New Earth, though it was just one of dozens of human settlements now scattered across this region of space. For 3 centuries, humanity had lived in the shadows, growing stronger, more numerous and more advanced, while the Vorsoth remained unaware of their presence. The original refugees from Earth had become a hidden power, manipulating events from behind the scenes, patiently working toward the day when they would emerge. That day was coming soon. Alan could feel it. The careful groundwork laid by generations of shadows was about to bear fruit. Begin final preparations for Operation Daybreak, he instructed his staff. It's time to accelerate our timeline. 400 years after the Exodus, the Grand Hall of the Confederation Summit Station buzzed with tension. Representatives from all 12 member species of the Vorsoth Confederation had gathered for the Centennial Assembly. Security was tight. Rumors of unrest had spread throughout the Confederation worlds. In the Vorsoth delegation, High Commander Zrel's descendant, Supreme Leader Krell, conferred with his advisors. Among them was Heather Collins, still disguised as a Solari after decades of service. The Karathi delegation is requesting a private meeting, she informed Krell. They seem agitated. Let them wait, Krell responded dismissively. The mining colony situation takes priority. Heather nodded respectfully. Of course, Supreme Leader. She left the Vorsoth chambers and walked through the massive station. Her communication device, disguised as a cultural ornament, silently transmitted everything she saw and heard to shadow operatives throughout the station. Outside the station, hidden in the rings of the gas giant, a fleet of ships waited. They were unlike any vessels seen in Confederation space, sleek, dark, and virtually undetectable to standard sensors. On the command ship, Admiral Sandra Ellis reviewed the final preparations. All ships report ready, her second-in-command informed her. Sandra nodded. And our operative? In position, awaiting final confirmation. The culmination of centuries of planning had arrived. Operation Daybreak, the moment when humanity would finally emerge from the shadows. Inside the station, Eric Lane prepared for his role. Externally, he appeared to be a high-ranking Karathi official. In reality, he was the most extensively modified human operative ever deployed. His genetic alterations went beyond surface appearance. His entire biology mimicked Karathi physiology. For 10 years, he had served as the Assistant Minister of Interspecies Relations, gaining the trust of the Karathi leadership. The main summit chamber was enormous, with delegations arranged in a semicircle facing the Vorsoth representatives. Supreme Leader Krell took the central position, flanked by his closest advisors. Heather stood several steps behind, seemingly a minor figure. We gather during troubled times, Krell began. The Confederation faces challenges on multiple fronts: resource shortages, communication disruptions, border incursions. Some have suggested these are not random events but coordinated attacks. Murmurs ran through the assembled delegations. We have investigated these claims, Krell continued, and found evidence of outside interference. Unknown forces have been attempting to destabilize our alliance. Eric Lane, seated with the Karathi delegation, exchanged a brief glance with Heather. The moment was approaching. These efforts will fail, Krell declared. The Confederation has stood for over 1,000 years. No outside force can break our unity. Eric rose to speak. As the Karathi Assistant Minister, he had the right to address the assembly. With respect, Supreme Leader, perhaps the threat is not from outside. Krell's 4 eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, Minister. I have evidence that may interest this assembly, Eric said. He activated a small device and holographic images appeared above the center of the chamber. The images showed historical records, the original meeting between humans and the Vorzoth Confederation, the ultimatum, the Exodus. Then came newer images, Vorzoth ships attacking defenseless human transports, the systematic exploitation of Earth's resources, the removal of the humans who had remained. These are fabrications, Krell said, but his voice lacked conviction. They are truth, Eric replied. Preserved by those who watched and waited, by those who were cast out but never surrendered. He reached up and touched his face. His features began to shift, the Karathi appearance melting away to reveal human characteristics. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Security forces moved forward, weapons ready. I am human, Eric announced, a descendant of those you exiled from Earth 4 centuries ago, and I am not alone. Throughout the chamber, others began to reveal themselves, disguised operatives who had infiltrated various delegations. Heather stepped forward from the Vorzoth section, her Solari appearance dissolving to show her human face. For generations, we have lived among you, watching as the Vorzoth Confederation exploited its member species. We have seen how they limited your technological development, controlled your resources, and manipulated you against each other. Confusion and anger swept through the chamber. Krell signaled his guards, but they found their weapons had been subtly disabled. "This is treason," he shouted. "No," came a new voice from the entrance. "This is justice." Admiral Sandra Ellis entered, flanked by human officers. Behind them, view screens showed hundreds of advanced ships emerging from hiding. "The human fleet," Krell whispered in shock. "Impossible." "We could destroy this station and your fleet," Sandra said calmly. "But that is not our purpose here." Dr. Vincent Morris, the human diplomatic envoy, stepped forward. "We come with evidence and a proposal." The evidence was overwhelming, centuries of Vorzoth manipulation and lies, documented meticulously by the Shadow Network. The revelation that the Vorzoth had deliberately held back technological advances from their supposed allies. The proof that many scientific breakthroughs credited to Vorzoth scientists had actually been stolen from other species. As the evidence mounted, representatives from the member species moved away from the Vorzoth delegation, forming their own groups. Anger turned to outrage. "What is your proposal?" asked the Tellarite Prime Minister. "A new alliance," Vincent replied. "One of equals, where no species dominates another, where knowledge is shared, not hoarded." From the back of the chamber, Maria Foster approached. She had spent decades building relationships with representatives of oppressed species throughout Confederation space. "Many of you know me as an advocate for equal rights," she said. "Today I stand before you as a human and as a voice for all those who have suffered under Vorzoth rule." The chamber fell into deep discussion. Some delegations withdrew to confer privately. The Vorzoth leaders, including Krell, were contained but treated with dignity, a sharp contrast to how they had treated others. Hours later, the first tentative agreements were made. The Confederation would be dissolved. A new alliance would take its place with representation from all former member species plus humanity. "And Earth?" asked one of the human officers. "Our original home, Earth, will be restored to us," Sandra Ellis confirmed. "But it will not be our only home. Humanity has spread across the stars. We have many worlds now." In the following weeks, the revelation of humanity's return and the collapse of the Vorzoth Confederation sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Some expected the humans to take revenge, to treat the Vorzoth as they had been treated. Instead, under the leadership of the former Shadow Directorate, humanity proposed a different path: justice without vengeance, cooperation without domination. 3. Months after the summit, a special fleet approached the Sol system. For the first time in 4 centuries, human vessels openly entered the space around Earth. Admiral Sandra Ellis stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at the blue-green planet on the view screen. "Scans show significant ecological damage," reported a science officer. "The Vorzoth mining operations were not kind to the planet." "We'll heal it," Sandra said firmly. "We have the technology and the patience." Director Alan Pierce joined her. At the viewport, 400 years. Sometimes I didn't think we'd make it. The Vorzoth thought they removed a threat, Sandra said. Instead, they created something they couldn't imagine. Earth grew larger on the view screen. It was changed, wounded, but still home. And now, after centuries in the shadows, humanity had returned, not as supplicants or refugees, but as architects of a new galactic order. Begin landing preparations, Sandra ordered. It's time to go home.